Good evening, everyone, and welcome to our 6-minute escape after party. So we have gathered with us this evening several of the authors whose pieces that you got to enjoy earlier tonight, and now is your opportunity to ask some questions of them. Just a reminder to everyone, in case anyone wasn't watching earlier on, my name's Kate Butler. I'm chair of the Arts Council Haliburton Highlands. Erin Kernahan-Burning is hosting with me tonight, and she's going to be masterminding behind the chat. So if you send questions through the chat function on YouTube, Erin's the one who's going to be relaying them to our authors. And so far this evening, we have Tom Taylor joining us, Sue Reynolds, Tammy Ray, Kate Campbell, and Patty Collins. So you can send questions via the chat to any of the authors here. They might be questions that apply to all of them if you want to ask in general about writing and travel, or you might have a specific question about a specific narrative that you heard this evening. So first off, and I'm going to make this one a nice open one to everyone. My first question really is about your inspiration to travel, because I think that anyone who is a writer also is a reader. I think the two just go hand in hand, that love of words. So do any of you have stories about a book that, or any other type of writing that just inspired you to travel, that made you want to go and book a trip that instant? Anyone have any?
Well, I could begin.
Yeah.
Often when I write, particularly the 1812 series of novels, the Brock's Agent series, of course, all the battles were fought very close to here in southern Ontario, Upper Canada at the time. So I always visit those battle sites. But recently, I did a novel called Choose. It's with my agent right now. It's about Upper Canada's first ambulance driver in World War I. It's based on the spirit of Grace McPherson. I changed the name to Hendricks, but Ted Barris, who's supposed to be with us,
maybe he's coming. Maybe he's on his way.
Late. So he told me about Grace and sent me some material with her over an ambulance, and it was quite fascinating what he sent me, and that inspired me to write the novel. And so I went to Vimy Ridge and went all through the battle areas, and of course to Étape, where the large Canadian hospitals were. And so it's kind of neat when you're writing, if you can afford to visit the actual, if it's historical fiction, as it was in my case, to visit the actual battle sites. And when I was at Vimy Ridge, I met a group of school kids from France, and they asked me through their teacher, why did I come? And I said, well, I'm, writing a novel, and, I told her the story, and she said, no, they want to know why Canadians came to save France. And of course, that's a much bigger question than I thought. These kids were 10, 11 years old.
Wow.
And get a question like that, it's kind of shocking. So that's that kind of stuff happens all the time when you travel as a novelist. I tell you another time about, visiting Nottingham and writing a Robin Hood book, but anyway, that's for another another time. So that's 2 travel stories you've got out of me now. That's enough.
Oh, and certainly, I mean, that idea of feeling inspired to go somewhere by documents that you've seen. Yeah. So does anyone else have a story about being inspired by a book that you read, or whether fiction or nonfiction, something that just made you want to go somewhere, whether you did or whether it's still on your list?
I have one.
That you
I have a
read,
couple.
or whether fiction or nonfiction, something that just made you
Oh, it's
want to
delayed.
go somewhere, whether you did or whether it's still on your list.
Can you hear me? Oh shoot, it's super delayed, huh?
Yeah, I'm not sure what's up there.
I can hear you now. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're clear
Okay.
now. So I think,
Yeah. So a couple of stories. Reading Jackie Cochran's biography was one of the things that led me to Sweetwater, Texas, to go and research the women pilots of World War II. That was definitely something that took me down into the United States, and just what a fascinating life that was. And then another aviation story, historical fiction, was about Beryl Markham, and Circling the Sun, about Africa. And it's sort of another version of Out of Africa. It's told through another character's lens, which is, of course, the novel and film. But oh my God, I want to go to Africa. I wait. Yeah, that's to come. Out of Africa. It's told through another character's lens, which is, of course, delayed.
Yeah, I don't know. Oh, technology. Oh, well, no, that sounds amazing, Kate. And we know you'll get to Africa. We know you'll get there one of these days. You'll do it.
Yeah.
Oh, so before we carry on, I just want to say a welcome. We've had a couple more of our super talented authors join us. So Deb Murphy's joined us as well, and Ted Barris. And I just want to remind anyone who is listening out there, anyone who's watching on YouTube, that you can send comments and questions to all of our authors through the chat function. Either you can send some open-ended questions that could apply to all of our authors, or you can send specific ones for one author in particular if you have specific questions. And speaking of, Erin, do we have any questions coming in the chat?
We do. Actually, we have a question from our very own Ruth Walker. And Ruth is throwing out her question to everybody. And she asks, where is the first place you'll travel to when the restrictions are lifted and we're back to some kind of normal?
England.
Any particular reason why, or?
It's a long story. It's another story, but let's just leave it at England.
Okay. And I think that this is one of those questions that I would love to hear an answer from everyone who's joining us on the call, in terms of where your next travel spot will be. And I think certainly, if I can add a little into Ruth's question, because this was actually one I wanted to ask as well. So well done, Ruth, for suggesting it. Yeah, so definitely, dream big as well. Where you'd love to go next. Tammy, yes.
Yeah, I actually, someplace that's been on my list for a long time, but my dream is Newfoundland. And I think that during COVID, what I've really realized is that I just want to spend some time traveling and seeing the stories that are right here. That I don't know enough about our own stories. And so I don't need to get it to an airport at all in a little bit. I think there's so much travel I can do right here. So
No, that sounds
slow
amazing.
travel.
Oh, sorry.
Amazing. And I think that that's one of the things that a lot of people have realized during the time of the pandemic is the importance of actually going and exploring your own backyard. as well, doing that near or close to home travel. And I think it will encourage more people to explore closer to home. Although in Canada, closer to home in terms of our own country, it's still a pretty big country. So let's see, Sue Reynolds, what about you? What's next on your travel list?
Well, the only thing I know for sure is we were supposed to be taking another writing retreat overseas back to Italy, to Florence this time, this October. And we, of course, have postponed that. We postponed it for a year, but we'll see how that goes. And then James and I were supposed to be going on as participants, like not leading it, but as participants on a writing retreat to England called Decency Be Damned in Yorkshire. So that's also been postponed just till next May. So I'm not 100% sure that's going to go ahead either. But anyway, those are two push pins on the map.
Oh, well, hopefully, fingers crossed. Sounds like amazing travel. Patty, what about you? What would be next on your travel list?
Well, I really feel that I'm stuck here in Guelph, Ontario. And I want to travel Canada. You know, I've been all over. I've been to Europe. I've been, since I was young, I've been traveling. And I want to go north and I want to go west. And I really feel that I've missed out by going so far away.
Mm. It is interesting that as Canadians, I think we're very inclined, to explore the further corners of the world, and sometimes we come to exploring our own country a little bit later. So, no, definitely lots to explore. Ted, what's next on your list?
First, I want to thank Tom for the shout out. I was listening, but I wasn't able to get connected until after he did his talk on grace. As you can probably imagine, because I referred to the trips we take with veterans and historians and friends of history overseas, I'm missing that because we do at least one a year, and last year we did 3. And the one I was looking forward to more than anything this year in May was to be in the Netherlands to acknowledge the 75th anniversary of the end of the war. And we had 2 veterans joining us on the trip. And I don't know whether they'll still be alive when we get the chance to go there. But I have so many friends in the Netherlands at different locations who take us to places where we realize what the liberation of that country meant to just local people and families and farmers and so on. I hope we get the chance to do that. There was some talk about postponing the 75th to next year, next May. But I have a feeling that this is going to carry deep into 2021 and probably make that unlikely too.
Well, we can just keep our fingers crossed, and we'll travel when we can travel, right?
Yeah. But thanks for the question, Ruth. That's a great one.
So let's see, who haven't we heard from yet? Deb Murphy. What's next on your travel list? Where would you like to go once the world's back to normal?
Someplace that doesn't have winters.
Not here.
Oh my God. And you know what? I don't have an optimistic point of view as to what's coming up for us. It just seems as though this is not going to go away anytime soon. So I think I expect that I'm going to be in place, or at least maybe I can just travel around Canada because everything else seems to be outside of my reach. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, and I think a lot of people are, they're taking things in stages in terms of how they're making plans. So no, I think that does make sense, definitely. Oh, so Kate, is Africa next on the list, or is there somewhere on your list first?
I wish. I think that, or my partner and I we're planning a trip to Scotland next year. And I don't know that that's going to happen. We both have Scottish heritage, and we had some friends over there who were going to take us around and really show us some things. And I'm just very inspired by.
Make sure you go to the Western Islands, off the west coast to the northwest. That's the best place in Scotland to go. It's fabulous, and it's
Okay.
very inspiring.
Yeah. Okay. Wonderful.
And with a last name like Campbell, lots of Scottish heritage.
Exactly. Like there's some crazy ancestors over there for sure.
Can I throw in a question, Kate? I wanted to ask Kate Campbell how Boundless is going. What's the status of the series?
Well, we just finished the short film version of it that I directed in last year. We just finished that now through COVID, and a lot of the Halliburton community, it was just so impactful the way they, we had the musicians playing live on the score, and that was sent back to Los Angeles, and so much community support. And that we're just getting ready to send out to the film festival tour, which will tour probably for a year and a half out in the world. So it's a published thing out in the world, which is really extraordinary, because as far as I know, it's the first narrative piece on these women, like dramatic narrative piece that has ever happened. Like it's the first one in the world. So we'll use that as a pitch tool as well.
Like
and to get some, some recognition through the festivals. It's a really good sort of strategy. Proven.
How many will be in the series?
Oh, we don't know yet. No, I mean, I've arced out. Oh, I mean, miniseries, it's like 6 episodes, but it could also go on and on and on and on. Like there's stuff into the 60s that was so fascinating. Jackie Cochran, who started the Women Air Force Service Pilots, started a program for the women astronauts in the 60s.
Oh, neat.
And
Wow.
if you've ever seen the documentary on Netflix called Mercury 13, it's very fascinating because she was such a force. But because she couldn't be the first woman in space due to health concerns, she shut down the program and went in front of Congress and said women don't belong in space. And so it was so interesting. This is a woman who held more records at the time of her death in 1980 than men and women pilots, male and female pilots. So really extraordinary. And then she regretted saying that and doing that later in life, but really interesting woman that I've researched for a lot of years.
Wow. So many stories just
Oh,
in terms of her.
Tell me about it. Yeah.
Oh, so I'm going to check in with Erin just for a moment now and see whether we have other comments and questions coming in the chat. So Erin, take it away.
So Irene Fisher is wondering, what is everyone's favorite place to travel?
So, favorite places to travel. What is your number one, the place you keep going back to again and again, or perhaps the place you went to once and it's just stood out forever?
It depends if I'm
So them in
traveling
Europe with the trips that we've done. I could go back every year to Vimy and not be bored. If you go on a cloudy day, it speaks to you in a cloudy manner. If you go there on a sunny day, it speaks to you with the sun smashing off it. I've done, a couple of books that explore some of the people who were there on both sides, and it's very spooky. It just has that remarkable way of opening the door to the history, even though there's very little there beyond the memorial. It's terrific. Same I find in Normandy, going back to the Juno beaches, as I do every few years. I find new stories every time I go there, and it just inspires me to find more veteran stories and tell them.
Ted, do you get a sense of home immediately as you're driving down the highway and you see the Parks Canada sign I mean, it's so distinctive, you can't miss it because it's French and English, right? And you pull in, and the guy behind at the visitors check-in, the guy behind the desk says, "How you doing?" You know, like in a Hamilton accent. And then you realize, I didn't understand this, that whole Vimy Ridge, the French gave it to Canada.
Yeah, when you go, you're right, Tom. When
All
you
the
go,
employees there are that work there are Canadian kids. It's fantastic.
that's right. Every time you go there, you don't need a passport because you're coming home. It's actually sovereign Canadian territory.
Yeah.
You go there. And when I go, and it's the same at Beaumont Hamel, which is the place where the Newfoundland regiment was clobbered on July the 1st, 1916. And every time I go there, there are Canadian kids who are our guides, and I always bring them a tub of Tim Hortons coffee.
That's great. That's great.
Well,
But it does give
definitely.
you a funny feeling when you pull into that park.
Yeah, it is spooky. It is. Yeah. Sue, what are you working on?
I actually this summer finished a novel I've been writing for off and on for 30 years. So yay for the pandemic. I don't think anything else would have gotten me to finish it. And I'm also working right now on a creative nonfiction project about the overlap between writing, mindfulness meditation, and psychotherapy. So that's my live project right now.
Wow. Thank you.
Wow.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
How about other people? What are other people working on?
That's a great question. What is everyone working on at the moment? What works in progress do other writers have?
Anyone want to hear a great story about Laura Secord?
Yes, I do. And I want you to tell it in nonfiction.
I know you do. I know. So I'm writing a new manuscript in the series, and it's called Brock's Spirit, and so it's Stony Creek, Laura Secord, and the Battle of Beaver Dams. They're the kind of bookends of what she was involved in. And, we all know the story of Laura Secord's famous run through the American lines, risking her life as a spy. If she gets caught, she gets shot. All the way from, and by the way, you can visit the Laura Secord Museum in Queenston and actually do her walk. They have it marked out for you. Are
there chocolates involved?
Yeah, sorry. That's a different Laura Secord. But so it's kind of an unbelievable run that she did. And I write my novels backwards. I know the ending, and I write that and see if that works. And then I kind of go to the beginning and write forward. Go to the beginning. So with Laura, I wrote the ending, and it wasn't believable that a woman would just up and leave her family early, like 4 a.m, and set out on this journey. And so I had to do more digging into her past. And I had mentioned this to you, Ted, before, but her father was Ingersoll, of the town Ingersoll. He founded the town Ingersoll, and so her original name was Laura Ingersoll, and they came from the United States, and it was a tough journey. But during the Battle of Queenston Heights on October 13th, 1812, where Brock is killed, Laura's husband James gets injured, shot really bad on the mountain at Queenston Heights, and Laura decides that she's not going to let her husband die on that mountain. She needs him too much, and she decides and she's only like 5'4", and she goes up the mountain, bandages him up, and carries him halfway down, collapses because he passes out from pain, and gets some officers to help her carry her husband and down the mountain, and essentially saves his life. So that's a little bit about Laura Secor's character, a much bigger character than we know or we're taught in school. This woman was made of steel. I mean, she was really tough.
Now I ask you folks, everybody who's listening, isn't it better if he tells it the way it really happened than if he fictionalizes it?
Oh,
He wants
Show
me
of
hands.
he wants me to write a nonfiction Laura Secord, but I'm halfway through a novel, for God's sake. I can't
Well, just take out the adjectives.
Yeah. That's what a typical nonfiction writer would say.
Okay.
But how do I capture her spirit?
That's what creative nonfiction is about, right, Sue?
Oh, well, I think it's time to check in with Erin again and see if we have any more questions coming in the chat. Do we, Erin?
We have a question from Marie Gage, and she would like to know what inspires your writing.
Open to you all. Yes, Patty.
I'm writing about living with a child with fetal alcohol. And I took a kid in, we didn't know. And over the years, trying to figure out what could help him, we realized he had fetal alcohol. And now he's 34. And it's like therapy. My writing is like therapy. And it's a success. He's doing really well, but he still has this brain change that will always be there, but he's finding different ways to, manipulate his life. And every day's exciting. And so every day there's something to write.
Wow, what a story, and and a story about constantly learning as well, yeah. I'd say. So, anyone else? What inspires your writing? Yes, Deb.
When I first came to Halliburton County, I joined places like the Ladies Auxiliary. I met women whose spouses had died and they were feeling helpless. So what I focus on these days is the sense of being connected to everything that has made us where we are today. I'm 66 and I'm feeling challenged physically. I'm usually struggling with walking and getting around. So when I talk about working on my house, it's a big deal. When I dropped out of school in 2013 from an art program that I was in because I was in so much pain, I'm also afraid of heights, by the way. I climbed scaffolding to do a repair on my skylight ceiling. And after a while, I stopped limping. It was really an amazing moment to realize I could go up and down stairs. So when I write poems or I write short stories, I incorporate the details of what it feels like to do what you need to do and not feel like a victim or not feel like you're being held hostage. So I can relate to writing something and focusing on people with challenges, disabilities, setbacks, and what it takes to overcome and feel like you're making a difference to somebody else who needs a boost.
Oh, that's fantastic, Deb. And that idea that, something something we write can provide that boost to someone else. That it's the boost can be internal, it can be about processing our own feelings, but knowing that we can help someone else as well. That's amazing.
Oh, I had family members who died, but we made the process of their death like a huge party. So for the 5 months that my mom was in palliative care, people came visiting. We stole TVs in the hospital and VCRs and watched stupid movies. My mother played bingo and did tie-dyes, and she was so excited. She didn't really have time to feel sorry for herself until she went into a coma. And my father-in-law, when he was dying, it was like over the course of a year, we took him for dinners, we went to respites. He had made his boys promise never to put him in a senior's home, but in the end, it wasn't practical to keep him home. And he agreed, and he chose his place that he was going to go to. By the time we got him there, we had potluck parties planned for his birthday. Everybody brought food that he liked. The whole process of getting him from where we went into his tumors and his cancer began to expand to getting him to the end. And we had in the extended care that he was in, we had the residents all dancing, people who said my family would never believe this. But I took videos and then I sent them little files and said, give this to your family because they're going to want to see it. So for me, it's all about making difficult times work better or work differently than what people might anticipate.
Wow. Thank you, Deb. That's amazing stories.
This evening has been really great.
Oh, well, thank you for joining us.
As difficult as it was.
So does anyone else have, in terms of what inspires you and what inspires you to write? Tammy.
Well, it kind of goes back to your very first question, which I didn't answer, which was, where have you read a book that makes you want to travel somewhere? And what I wanted to say was, and then this conversation just makes it even more so, is that when I read books my whole life, it's not just where, it's when. So when we can time travel, that's the kind of travel I want to do. I want to see New York in the 40s. I want to have a martini there. I want to go back to like every story that you've just all told. My father, we have a big connection to the War of 1812. Like, I wanted to see that. Like, sure, Laura, I'll help you carry your husband down the mountain. It's like you just want to. I think, and that's why I think it's so great that we capture stories, because that's the great thing about passing them along, is that they're just so good. So yeah, time travel is where I want to travel.
I did think about that as one of my questions that I was thinking, I asking about where do people want to travel or what inspires you. I was thinking, yeah, if we could factor time travel in there, but I mean, that's my museum director brain also working by then. But definitely, the whole idea of traveling and the power that the books that we read have to help us travel through time as well as space. So in terms of other inspirations, what inspires your writing? Anyone who hasn't mentioned anything yet? No?
Ted.
Well, I think,
Ted, I'd like to know why Ted has written 3,000 books about Canadians putting their lives in harm's way.
Well, that's part of the inspiration is trying to find out why. And there are just as many stories of why as there are Canadians whose stories I've found. But the inspiration, Tom, as you know, and I get the feeling that it would be similar for all of us, is listening to people tell us their stories, or reading their letters. I'm right now about 2/3 through one of the most extraordinary battles of the Second World War. It's called the Battle of the Atlantic. And this was the role that the Canadians and other Navy seamen and so on played in getting the convoys from North America to Britain to stay alive through the first part of the war, and then to build up for the invasion in 1944. And everyone tells me when I take on these big projects like D-Day or Vimy, they say, well, it's all been written. How could you find anything else? Well, there's lots there that if you look hard enough. Does anybody remember the old days on Hockey Night in Canada on Saturday night when Esso used to sponsor the broadcast, and there was a guy who used to be the Esso spokesman, and his name was Murray Westgate? Anybody?
Of course.
Yeah. Happy motoring, remember?
Yeah, and always look to Imperial for the best.
Right. Well, Murray was in the Navy, but he didn't get there until he was a telegraphist and lived in Regina and hated not being able to get into the war, and being in the middle of the country, getting to sea was difficult. Suddenly his telegraphy gets him sent to a little place called Fort Ramsey in Gaspé. Now, Gaspé, if you know your Canadian geography, is part of the Gulf of St. Lawrence. Well, the Gulf of St. Lawrence played one of the key roles in our role in the Battle of the Atlantic. Murray gets sent to Port Ramsey about 6 days before the first U-boat attack in 1942. And he's on the radio passing along information to the powers that be to chase this U-boat down. By coincidence, I found a guy named Jack Braley, who was a Canadian press reporter from Montreal. He was sent to Gaspé to cover the opening of the Fort Ramsey location, and he's there fighting to get the story out before the censors get to it. I've got the records of the U-boat commander who was in that U-boat actually coming into the Gulf at that moment. Thanks to the internet, you can get access to some of these things. So now suddenly a story that everybody says, it's already been written, has brand new complexion because I found the voices of the people who witnessed it. A guy who was in a radio shack in Gaspé, a reporter who was down there to cover it, a U-boat commander who's about to sink a ship, and some of the people who survived that sinking, all recorded in newspapers, letters, recordings that I have. I actually interviewed Murray back in 1988, and he told the story way back then. So I've got all the voices, and it'll be a brand new story. That's an inspiration.
Definitely. And in these cases, when we're talking about history, and that it is easy to say, well, that story, that narrative's already been written, but as soon as a new part of the story comes to light, a new voice, then
you see that little board back there?
Yes.
That's the Battle of the Atlantic from 1939, which is right about over there, to 1945, which is right about over there. And all those little post-its are people and events and ships and that, all the items that I need. And I'm somewhere around here in the middle of 1942 right now.
Wow, talk about time travel. So I think we should probably check in with our chat again and see whether any of our viewers have any questions. Erin, do we have any?
The chat is a little quiet right now, so.
All right. So I think I have another question for everyone, but of course, anyone who is watching, who is listening out there, if you have questions you want to send in through the chat for any of our authors, please do so. But my question, actually, and this is open to any of you, is about your writing style, and how you go about the writing process. Whether you're someone who writes every day, is writing something you do Monday to Friday, 9 to 5? Do you have a set number of words you like to get in every day when you're writing? Or just any thoughts you'd like to share on the process of putting things down on paper or computer screen?
Yeah. When I have a deadline, it's just write until it gets done.
Right.
But when I don't, I try to adhere to at least an hour a day It's been challenging lately because of finishing the film and whatnot, but I find that that's satisfying to me, that I know that even if I'm staring at the page or if I write a bunch of nonsense, that's still okay. It's still satisfying to me, you know, and sometimes it's longer than that, but it just give myself and carve out that time and space for myself. I feel I stay connected.
I think the
Definitely.
key is to write every day. I mean, that's very important, is writing every day. If you can do that, you will keep your basic skill at a high level. Weiss and Choi, who I would guess most of you knew, always, you know, emphasized ass in the chair. You've got to do it. You got to put the time in, or, you know, the novel's not going to write itself, or the nonfiction work is whatever you're writing, poetry, creative nonfiction. You still have to put your ass in the chair and get down to work. And you need to do that every day.
And I don't think you have to set the bar so high that if you don't get X number of words done today, it's a defeat. Never. I mean, I'm sure I'm not unlike the rest of you. If I feel good about a sentence or a paragraph, if it takes me the whole damn day to get there, so be it.
Yeah.
And that makes it all the more rewarding. It doesn't matter how many words, although I'm writing to a deadline too, Kate. I've got to have this damn thing finished by Christmas, and I don't think it's going to be a problem because all of my talks have blown away, and I have all this time on my hands to write. So it's going to be fine. But you know, I don't think setting too many bars helps you unless the bar can vary in height and altitude.
I would like to add the fact that I write. Is that okay?
Yep.
I write a bunch of drafts according to things I'm thinking about. And then when something comes up, that's about the time when I start to expand and I play with it and I play with it. And then my brain is emptied and then I'm done. I don't think about it. It's just done. And then I start something else. But I've always got ideas that I can come back to because they're all drafts. They're just drafts. I think a lot about being the descendant of slaves. So I will put that as a title and then build it. And maybe I leave it alone because I need to change or shift the perspective according to what else is happening. And over the years, times when I'm having physical setbacks or something else has come up, I will focus on that for the moment. And once I've expressed that thought, it's over. I just put it away and I'm ready for a new thought, one of the other undone titles to kick in.
Well, I'm that's a fascinating process. And I love that idea of, you know, the title that catches your mind, or that sort of topic sentence that you put down and go, you know, I'm going to percolate that through and figure that out, but you know, you don't have to do it all in one go and that kind of thing. So yeah, that's fascinating. Anyone else?
And when I sit down, I'm ready to go.
Yes, definitely, because it's all percolated through. Definitely.
Can I offer Deborah an inspiring idea? At the top of Queenston Heights, there's a plaque that's the size of your laptop, no bigger.
Mm-hmm.
And it tells a very short tale about, I can't remember if it's 36 or 38. It's almost 10 years that I wrote the novel. So 36 to 38 African-American slaves fought beside the British 41st Regiment at the Battle of Queenston Heights.
Hmm.
All 36 of them showed up to fight, and often during or just before the battle, men would suddenly not feel well, or they'd get a fever or whatever, and they didn't show up. That happened a lot. But all 36 of these guys showed up to fight. And of course, if the British lost, they were going back across the river, and they were fighting for a whole different reason than the British were fighting. But it's a fascinating story, and it's not been told by anyone in the Black community. Now, I told it in Brock's Railroad, a theoretical beginning of the Underground Railroad, and it went over. It's probably my biggest selling novel, but the tale really needs to be investigated by someone from that community.
Just like Laura Secord.
There you go. There you go. That would invest the time to really understand that story. So, anyways, there you go. There's a story for you. Ted does this to me.
I can so relate to what you're saying, because the year my mom died in 2007, and my aunt was a Black history writer. Another was the first Black Canadian ordained minister.
Really?
And so we went and did a reunion in Queensbush. We had Lincoln Alexander show up.
Oh, great.
My aunt gave speeches, and I was the stand-in for the fact that my mother didn't make it that year. We went back to the house where my mother grew up, where she had gone to school. The people allowed us to come in and look at what had been done to their homes, where they had gone to church. We just drove around and spent the entire day. And then every year after that, we used to go back as well. And you look around at different things and you sense, wow, this is a part of our heritage that we've almost lost touch with. And yet it's sitting right there. It's just there.
Yeah.
So what you're saying makes perfect sense as well, that sometimes no matter when you do it, it's time to talk about the things everybody thinks are redundant, because they're not.
Well, I would just put to you, think about how far ahead Brock's thinking was when this group of African-American slaves, escaped slaves, comes and says, we don't want to fight with the white militia. We want our own Black company. And he says, okay, we'll do it. Now imagine even today, if you tried that. I mean, I think, Trudeau would have a heart attack if someone put that to him. But I mean, it was quite remarkable for the time that he would give the, that he would allow something like that. Of course, they deserved it, but, this is 1812, remember? So anyways, enough.
I lost a chunk, as though I lost internet connection for a moment or something, because you started to talk and then there was this big gap, and then you finished the sentence. So I'm hoping when I play this back, I may be able to, I don't know, are we recorded?
If you want, you just send me an email, or if you'd like to send out the contact to Deborah, I'd be glad to give you all the information I have.
Definitely. And there's so many.
Sounds like a plan.
There's so many powerful stories out there just waiting to be told. So we're coming up on about a 1 hour mark in terms of our after party. So I'm going to do one last check-in with Erin to see if we have anything in the chat.
And we do. We have Quigster23, who I think is Joseph Quigley, and he is asking us, if at all, how has your writing or travel memories helped you through the pandemic?
I think that's a really great question. I'm sure everyone's just figuring out the right way to talk about the answers, because I think everyone, memories and thoughts about experiences that we've had have kept everyone going through these times. But exactly how, I would love to hear.
I'm finding that I'm not writing. I'm not doing much in the arts. The COVID has taught me to relax, I guess. But my mother, who would be 104 in 2 weeks, she passed away this week. And people are sending me letters that they have kept from, for 104 years, I guess, and all kinds of information that I didn't know. I don't want to write about my mother, but all this is giving me ammunition to get started on a story. But, like you say, there's stories everywhere. And I think that this is so stimulating that I can't wait to get started. But the actual, and people talking about writing every day, no, I belong to the writers group in Halliburton, and every 2 weeks we would get together, and I would find even in between those 2 weeks that I wouldn't, but being together in the group, I would go forward. And I'd be stimulated too by other writers. But, COVID, no. I haven't cleaned my house either. I've learned to do nothing.
You only need to listen to Ted for 5-10 minutes, and you have to be careful because he'll inspire you. You'll be writing another damn novel.
Oh, Tammy, yes.
Yeah, I found that I'm almost dividing COVID into phases. And phase one, I couldn't, let alone create or work on any of my creative projects. I couldn't even read a book because I just couldn't. I just was so wrapped up in what was happening. I was checking the Corona world numbers every, 5 times a day. And it just seemed really unsettling, and I couldn't focus, and it made me more appreciate maybe why literacy in people who have food insecurity or homes insecurity, that reading is really not something that you can just say, well, just read, because when you have other things going on, that's really difficult. But I feel blessed and lucky that those are not my challenges. And so I feel like we're all much better prepared this time, like in the fall. Like we all know we're going into a long, cold winter. We're all gathering our little things. And I'm taking it as the blessing of the time to reflect and create and, get those things down that I always thought that I would, but I've never had time to actually get them done. So, and there's a whole list of books to read too.
Definitely. And I think it is interesting, really what you said there, Tammy, about dividing it into stages, into phases, and how we have processed this whole experience, and how everyone, I think, has processed this time differently, and everyone has marked it in different ways. Anyone else?
I just want to say, Patty, I want to congratulate you to participate. Is it still there? I just wanted to pass along condolences to Patty and to say it's great that you were able to join this and sort of let us know what you've been facing, particularly this week. It must be very difficult. So many people have lost loved ones in this period and have had to do it in isolation. And that's so odd for us. We're, as a race, we're more likely to seek each other's help through these things, and it must be very difficult. So I sympathize.
Yes.
Thank you very
During
much.
COVID.
My mother's sister is 108, and she passed away on Friday. She passed away yesterday. So both of them. There's a Jewish background, and they bury the dead right away, you know, so everything has to happen right away. So it's really quite an but you know, like the yeah, COVID, everything else, but also both of them were saying enough is enough already. You know, you don't want to live that long. It wasn't good. You know, there was no stimulation. There was no friends. There were, you know, it really brought, like, my grandchildren are young, and, you know, they're going to think about death in a different way than, you know, my husband passed when he was 50. You know, that's very, very different. And so it's really a joyous time, you know, celebrating all this we're learning about my mom and people writing and sending, you know, so it's really, it's very different than what you would think. I just want to add one more thing when we're talking about reading. So this boy that I took in, he's illiterate. And, you know, of course, and I was the head of an English department in a high school. So, I mean, to me, that was the most important thing in the world for him. But he's 34 now. He works driving heavy equipment, and he's in this machine, and he paid for audio books.
Oh,
And
very
he's reading Stephen King and all things about the mafia, all kinds of things that he always wanted to know. And, you know, that literate, the word, he's just blossoming. He's, you know, it's the new technology.
Oh. I spent part of this summer recording my first audiobook.
Oh.
It was really inspiring because never having done that. I mean, I'm a broadcaster. I started in broadcasting 50 years ago, and yet I've never thought until, or challenged my publisher to consider my doing an audiobook until this past summer. And time, I did The Great Escape in 14 sessions of about 3 hours each, and it's done, and it'll soon be on Audible, which is going to be exciting.
Oh, wow, that's very difficult to read.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. But I would find it very difficult to read. As I'm reading my own work out loud, I start adding.
Well, you're your best editor.
Oh, but I think that is, I mean, really interesting to bring this conversation back around to the question of audiobooks and the power of audiobooks. And I do believe this is something I have heard my co-host, Erin Kernahan-Burning, say, that a reminder that audiobooks, if that's how you like to enjoy your books, that is still reading. That still counts. I got it, right. So, yeah, and really that connects so well with the experience we've had tonight, with listening to stories in that kind of auditory fashion. And when you think that that's where the whole history of storytelling really goes back to, is sharing stories through people's voices as well as the written word. So, Erin, we're going to do one last check-in. Anything else in the chat?
There isn't.
All right. Well, before we sign off for the night, I just want to check in and see if anyone has anything else that they'd like to share. Any of the questions that were asked that you didn't get a chance to give your answers to, or any other thoughts?
How will the money be used that's raised from this for the arts group?
So the funds that are raised this evening, and actually, thank you, Ted. That was a wonderful segue for me to remind everyone that the GoFundMe link is still up. I didn't even ask you to do that. So yes, our GoFundMe link is still live and will still be live in the coming days. So specifically, these funds are going to help with the programs that the Arts Council Haliburton Highlands runs. So we have an extensive range of programs. We're actually learning to turn a lot of our programs around and adapt to these new times and find ways like this to connect people in different ways. But we're definitely looking in the days ahead, the months ahead, and how we can best support the arts community throughout the Haliburton Highlands as everyone else adapts as well to these new and different times. So, no one has any other final thoughts? Well, I would just like to say a huge thank you to all of our authors for sharing your creativity, sharing your writing, and your time and your thoughts with us, and for also taking up the challenge to also make your own videos. When we came to you and asked, would you be game to do this? So thank you so much for your generosity with your time and your talents. I would also like to say a huge thank you to the organizing committee that helped to put this event together over the last several months. So Marie Gage, Irene Fisher-Davidson, Ruth Walker, and Renee Woltz. And a huge, huge shout out to Erin Kernahan-Burning, my co-host, who has been our tech guru all the way through this. So she is the technical mastermind on all of this. So thank you, Erin. So I'd just like to thank everyone who's been watching this evening for joining us and for sending your questions in through the chat. Thank you to everyone who's made a generous contribution in support of the Arts Council Haliburton Highlands. And I would declare that this has been an incredibly successful evening. So I have a feeling that some form of 6-minute stories is going to be back again sometime soon. We'll catch you then. Thanks very much, everyone. Have a great night.
Night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.